All right. All right. All right. Brandon.
Yeah.
Um. Yeah. How are you? But like, how are you really though? We don't see you anymore. What are you doing? What have you been doing, huh?
Well, I mean, I didn't go on a trip to Joshua Tree.
That's not what I'm asking. What have you been doing?
I've been
What do you
watching
do in your free
movies.
time in La Palma these days?
Well, you see, I have a girlfriend, which like the opportunities are, we go out on dates. So we've been going to a lot of museums lately. We went to the Broad,
The
the
Broad.
Broad. I always call it the Broad.
Yeah, I wonder
Um,
why.
uh,
These fucking broads.
I went to the
we went
fucking Broad.
we went to an Angels game. They lost. It was very close, but it was very fun. We go to the movies a lot, and yeah, I mean that's about it. I work a lot, 5 days a week, 40 hours a week, which is nice
What do
to
you do?
have
What do you
that.
do for Brandon time? When it's
I
just you.
I don't really get Brandon time anymore,
Hmm.
which is
You
okay.
should. Yeah.
But I'm gonna get some this week, and that's gonna be good for me to
What do you
you
plan
know
on doing during
Recuperate.
your Brandon time? You gonna take yourself on
uh
some dates?
yeah, maybe. Who knows? Maybe I'll
Not me. That's why I'm asking.
been watching a lot of Ted Lasso lately.
All right.
Yeah.
New season is shit. I heard.
It's not, but it's just people are finding it and they're like,
My
"Oh,
my parents hate it. They're like, this new season fell off, and
I
they
I
love
do
Ted
think
Lasso.
it's the weakest season for sure, but I don't think it sucks. I just think they don't know where to go with a few of the characters because their arcs have already concluded. So you're stuck with like two or three characters who have unresolved arcs and then the rest are kind of just there.
Okay. Cool.
So it's tough. It's tough. We'll see how it sticks the landing. But I mean, maybe I'll be watching more movies. I did tell you guys that I wanted to rewatch my top 100 in reverse order to see if they really are my top 100 movies. I think I'm going to start doing that soon since I just got to 4,000. And yeah, I think that's
Cool.
pretty exciting. But also, maybe I'll plan a coaster trip. I'm planning something to Northern California later this year.
Oh, really?
So, yeah.
That's cool.
So that might
Well,
involve Joe. So who knows?
yeah. We'll see. Only Joe knows, I guess. Anyways, I just want to check in with you because Chris and I we don't see you much anymore. So,
Not my
and
fault.
is it? I'm just kidding. Welcome back to Stacked episode 112, everybody. We're coming at
So
you
stupid.
live. Coming at you live on a Sunday morning. It's 10 a.m. when this episode drops. Not where we're recording it right now. And today we're gonna be talking about a very special subject that we love. We can't get enough of it. It's war.
Nuclear war.
We love war. We love when thousands and millions of people die on the battlefield in bloodshed. We love killing. We love war.
America.
I
America.
love war. Ah! You think there's a guy out there who just loves war?
Yes.
Like the concept of it, and he just always
Yeah.
wants war. What we need
I'm
is
sure.
another war.
What we need is another war.
No, I hate war.
No, war sucks.
As a sane human being, I hate war.
Pro war.
Believe it
But
or
you
not.
know, it's Memorial Day weekend when this comes out. So what better to honor the troops than to talk about the bloody battles that they fell in? So, uh,
Ethan.
yes.
When I texted Evelyn that we were doing war movies, she was like, she thought I meant like, oh, and I was like, I love war movies. She's like, she thought I was saying I love war. And then she sent me a text that said, pro war, thumbs down and then a salute and American flag. And I said, no, I'm pro-war movie. I'm not pro-war.
Pro-war movie. But does that make you pro-war, though?
No, you can make
unless
up
they're
wars.
anti-war movies, which
Well, I don't know. What do you think about Star Wars? Huh?
Not a war movie. It's not a war movie.
If
anyone mentions Star Wars on this episode, I'm gonna fucking kick you in the head. All right, I'm gonna spit in my hand and slap you on the back of the head so hard. No, I don't want to hear about that stuff.
Well, that's
but yeah,
good.
we're gonna be talking about war movies. And for me, I love war. No.
Stop it.
Stop it.
Okay, no. I want to talk
Stop
about
endorsing it. You fuck.
I want to talk about how great war is. No, okay, I'm done. I want to talk about I feel like there's 3 archetypes to war movies. Movies leading into a war, movies during a war, and movies after a war. So that's how I sort of broke down my films. And I'm going to try my best to talk only about anti-war movies because I do not like war. But it's been said time and time again that it is damn near impossible to make a movie that takes place during a war that is anti-war, because showing the act of war itself is like what is it, making a spectacle out of it?
It's like fetishizing.
Yeah, and it glorifies it in its own kind of way.
So I think I'm just gonna lay that out as a disclaimer for some of my picks. There will be scenes in these movies that do show off war in a spectacular way, but I feel like its core messages still pertain to being anti-war. Which I think are the best kind of war movies. I don't think the war movies that are like war is good are the best war movies.
I like war movies that show the war as it is, but not a documentary.
But even showing it as it is still glorifying it.
All right. I'm going to turn my camera away.
Yeah. Oh, that'd be great.
He just turns around. Brandon just turned around.
But what about you, Chris? You love war maybe more than me. So
yeah. So like war, right? Get a load of that. For me, like the way that I kind of did it was I kind of divided it similarly to you, Ethan. But I instead of doing pre-war, during war, and post-war, I did mine as first. This first section is my collection of movies that show the repercussions of war, and like the suffering of people, and kind of like what comes out of this, which is pretty much no gains and all the suffering. My second section is like my movies that kind of just straight up depict war, whether that be in, as we mentioned, like a spectacular fashion or in a very like gritty, like hard to look at fashion. There's variance between those two very much throughout film history. Yeah. And my last one, and this is kind of the one that's a bit more fun, just because I want to keep things a little light. These are movies that like are set within a war, but do something that like shifts the genre. So so like maybe some fantasy elements, maybe some horror elements,
Star Wars
here and there. Star Wars, and that would be my first pick. Star Wars. No.
He's like, don't you fucking dare.
Yeah, Brandon, did you do anything special for yours, or did you just kind of go for it?
Well, war is good. War is bad. I mean, there are movies that do glorify war in a sense.
Yeah.
And I think it's important to recognize those, is to point out what not necessarily is. But it's not like the major perspective of the movie. I don't think any filmmaker goes into a war movie and goes, yeah, like, unless it's like, I don't know,
like Battleship.
Yeah, exactly. Like
movies
military
that are clearly
propaganda.
Guy Ritchie's The Covenant. It looks like that.
It's not, surprisingly, but I thought it would be. That's why I didn't want to watch it. But I had to make her happy. So
what? No way. All right.
Yes, but
way to throw her under the bus on the episode.
Hey, but I think there's lots of ways to do it. There's lots of great war movies of different types and different eras, because I don't want to stick primarily towards like World War II and World War One, you know?
Yeah.
But I also don't want to stick primarily towards movies where it's just people on the battlefield getting slain left and right, because there is more to war than that. Even though we love
so
it.
Cool.
Oh, cool.
I love
it's so
blood.
I love
war.
it when in Saving Private Ryan, the guy. I love it in Sausage Party when the Oreo loses his back.
That's you know what, Sausage Party might count because in a way that's a religious war.
Holy war.
A war of ideas.
Holy war. It is a holy war. It's about faith.
We came to talk about war. Wins above replacement, a stat in Major League Baseball that we all love, really. And that's like primarily where my movies come from.
We all love Major League Baseball?
Yeah.
Somehow you made all your war movies about baseball, like you do with sports movies. We'll see. We'll see how it works out. Yeah. Well, without further ado, let's get into it, shall we? Let's get into these war movies.
Yeah.
Chris, I want you to start.
Cool.
Tell us movie.
We were talking about the whole like glorification of war kind of being an inevitable thing when you just depict war in general, because oftentimes war is a spectacular thing to look at because, you know, it's extravagant, there's a lot of explosions and all this stuff, you know, and you know, you make an exhibition out of it, right?
Yeah.
And like, you know, there's like we said, there's variance between how this can be handled, because I was thinking about this while I was making my list. Like, I remember a few years ago, I was talking to one of the cinematography professors at Chapman, Jörg Walther, really, really sweet, the sweetest person ever.
Yeah.
And Jörg was telling me about like how he feels about war movies. Keep in mind, Jörg is a Polish cinematographer, born and raised in Poland. So, and he's quite old, so you know, this is a very sensitive thing for him, understandably. And I asked, like, we were talking, and I was having this conversation with him right after Sam Mendes's 1917 came out, which is a movie that I really like, Ethan really likes, and Brandon, you like well enough. And I was talking to him, like, what did he think about that movie visually? And he was telling me about how as much as he admires the scope, the scale, and all the intricacies that went into making this film such a engrossing, almost like first-person experience, he did feel like this movie teetered into glorifying the war because the visuals are so overwhelmingly beautiful, and that might be a compliment and a detriment to Deakins' work. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But on the adverse side, you have movies like, say, All Quiet on the Western Front, which is incredibly hard to watch, especially the one from the 30s. I really like the one from the 30s because it's so brutal and hard to look at. And though even the one that came out last year, I thought was still nonetheless pretty good. Didn't do much for me. That it didn't do anything new for me, but like nonetheless, still, you know, kind of those two movies kind of live within the opposite ends of that spectrum of like how you depict war on screen and the effects that it can have on that. Yeah, so like 1917 kind of has that glorifying look to it because it's so sterile. It's very beautifully shot. And then there's All Quiet on the Western Front, which has this very gripping and textured like grime to it. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And yeah, so I've always found that to be something that like is very challenging for DPs to helm because, you know, of course you want your films to look good, but you also want your film's visuals to complement the tone of what you're trying to convey. And I think 1917 and All Quiet handle that in their own regards very well. But yeah, that's a little something for you. I don't know if you guys have any takeaways on that or any thoughts beyond what I talked about, but
1917 was one of mine. One of my honorable mentions for like the during the war, you know. I think it's just like it does a really good job of placing you right in it, you know, and doing that, you know, the trick of making it all look like it's one take. Super impressive.
It's a stunt, by the way, Ethan. A stunt. Oh. Not a trick or gimmick. We're bringing that back.
Yeah.
How long? Wow,
Where is he? Let's not mention his name, but where is he? What's he doing right now? You know?
God knows.
Who knows? Who knows? I hope he's well.
Yeah, me too.
But yeah, 1917. I remember seeing that. They did an early screening for it at the Felino in film school, and I just remember being blown away. And I was just like, I was walking back to Snet 1 after watching that and just being like, holy crap. Holy crap. You know, I went, oh my god.
Oh my god.
Oh my god. Holy crap. You know, it made me say, yeah, war is awesome. No. I feel like that's the closest someone will ever get to an anti-war movie that shows off the spectacle of war, because it is so relentless, you know? Because it's a tiring, and I'm not saying that in a bad way, it's a tiring one take, you know, that they try to pull off that stunt, that gimmick, that stunt, that stimmick, you know?
It's not one take, it's two.
What?
It's two. There's a
because there's the blackout in the middle when he hits his head.
Yeah.
Maybe everything did go black, like the whole world. You don't know that.
That's true. Who's subjectivity? You know what I'm saying?
For all he saw, yeah. I forgot it's two. That's lame. Why'd they do that?
I don't know.
I hate this.
Because they had to pass some time, so it went to nighttime.
I know. I know. I think this is a masterpiece of a film. I gave it 5 stars. I gave it 4.5 the first time I watched it, but then when I rewatched it with I think I went and saw it with you, Chris.
Yeah, I think it was when did we take Tori to go see it or something?
Yeah, I think so. Because I didn't see
Something
it with
like
you
that.
guys.
It was because it was the January 2020 season, you know?
Yeah.
I remember. And I was just like, wow. I've never seen anything like this before. And I wonder how I would feel if I revisit it, you know? Maybe I don't know. I don't know how I'd feel revisiting it, because I just remember it was like such a novel thing, you know? And it was the movie that I wanted to win Best Picture, if that controversial.
Wow.
I liked it. I like it more than Parasite. But I don't know. Maybe I did. Maybe I don't anymore. Who knows? You know. But at the time, it was like that was my favorite movie of the year, right behind Uncut Gems and Endgame. So very brutal film. Very beautiful looking film. The flare scene.
I mean, come on.
The music
gorgeous.
to that, the music to that is so beautiful. And just the way they did that, I was just like, it feels like, I don't know, it feels like ballet or something, you know? It feels like an opera, you know? The way that the lights go, it feels like stage lights, like lighting up like this set, you know? It's really cool. Brandon, what do you think about 1917?
You know, I don't think I have as an emotional connection to the film as everyone else does. And I don't know why. And maybe it's because I've seen a lot of war in my life.
What?
I've seen some shit.
No, you haven't. Oh, Arizona. That's no man's land right there. That's ground zero for all war. They have in Arizona.
I'm talking about war films.
I'm talking about war movies, all right?
Hey, I'm not talking about actual war. And okay. I don't know. I just think when I look at this movie, it's not doing anything exceptionally in terms of its storytelling about... Because in terms of a war movie, it's pretty bog standard. It's a movie about these two soldiers who are rookies trying to get to this mission. Get this mission done for their... so that they can stop something from happening that's going to happen.
But that's what I like about it. It's so personal. It's so small scale. This big war. You know,
it is, but there's nothing about it that is essentially unique. I've seen movies that utilize the ticking clock as an element, and here I think it's less effective, even if it is incredibly filmed on a technical. I'm not gonna discredit the fact that it's not actually one take, or that it's trying to do a gimmick or a stunt. I think that's really admirable, and I think the effects are great. I think the performances are really good. I just think when it comes to my emotional attachment to the film, it just feels so generic in terms of what it's doing as a war movie.
I honestly, I kind of see what you're saying, Brandon, because like even as someone who, much like Ethan, gave this movie 5 stars, like, I mean, I was emotionally attached to the character, kind of similarly to Ethan, because of how simple and how like direct I was able to like connect to this person because of how close we were to them throughout the film in terms of its like in how it goes about telling this person's story. But I do agree, like thematically, storytelling, plot wise, nothing new here. This movie's all about the what I believe. I believe this movie's more than anything about the experience of this real time experience, if you know what I mean.
Right. Yeah.
And like Brandon, I know you and I shared gripes about this, even though I love this movie, that like this movie should not have been nominated for a screenwriting Oscar. I thought that was ridiculous. I don't know where that came from. Yeah, I was like, what? They have like no lines, and like it's so straight up. Like the craftsmanship is what you're here for.
There's a reason why Sam Mendes was getting all the praise for this movie.
It's Mendes and Deakins.
The director is like the star. I feel like Deakins and Mendes were the stars of this movie, you know?
Which is like, and that's why I'm happy that Bong Joon-ho won for Parasite, because that's incredibly well directed, one of my favorite movies, but it's like, when you look at a directorial achievement, size and scope is really important to rein it all in. And that's what's most impressive about this movie, because like you might be connected to the characters, but the war films where I connect most to the characters are not the ones where they're always on the battlefield, you know, whereas this movie is almost exclusively they're always on the battlefield. You know, there's no time for them to, except for that one scene with the lady, and
the kid and the baby.
Yeah, exactly.
And
that's the one scene. Yeah. That it feels like it's trying to do something different, whereas everything else is running away or walking through a minefield. Well, not that Brandon, it's not impressive, but it's good.
Do you want to talk about a film that's really impressive to you? That that you emotionally resonate with?
No,
oh no,
I'm not. I'm not gonna say that this movie emotionally resonated with me, but I think it is
the characters. I mean,
Oh, you want me to change it up there? Well, I could save that other one for later.
No, I'm just saying, talk about another war film. I was trying to do a classy segue to your next pick.
I mean, I guess so. I guess it could do that. It's ironic.
You keep talking about 1917? I don't know.
No. It's ironic that I said at the beginning of our episode that I didn't want to do any World War II movies, but I have an exception. And I'm talking about this movie from Denmark. It's called Soldier of Orange. Directed by Paul Verhoeven.
The Soldier of La Palma. Soldier of Orange.
Everyone,
me with the musket.
Can you refer to Brandon as the Soldier of La Palma from now on? Whoever's listening. Yeah. La Palma's bravest warrior.
Okay. So it stars Paul Rutger Hauer. And it's about a small group of friends who go to school in Netherlands during World War II. And right before World War II, and then when like the Nazis invade Netherlands, there are a lot of people who there are people who side with them in their friend group. There are people who side with the resistance. Some are like wanting to be like what is it? They're not conscientious objectors. They just don't want to participate in anything. Like they're neutral. And so like you see all of these friends sort of weave in and out of each other's lives through the war, through like the actual battlefield to like the political battlefield of it all. And some like join the Nazi side and like go hardcore into the ideology, whereas some of them are so far against it. And then when they meet up later in their life during the war, it makes for a very interesting dichotomy because they have a history and they obviously have a disagreement over what step to take next. But that's what makes it so good, because you have this personal connection to the characters that is established before in the prologue of the movie, essentially. And then as the film progresses and there's flash forwards and flashbacks to their lives, it just builds and builds until there's like a very interesting emotional catharsis in the third act regarding all of their fates. And it's tragic, but it's also kind of beautiful in that sense, you know? And I'm not saying, oh, I empathize for like a Nazi figure or like an Axis power figure in history, but it is very interesting to see that perspective, to see how somebody can be corrupted and turned into something that they initially didn't seem to be about.
No, definitely. I've never even heard of this film, but just like hearing what you were saying and seeing what's on Letterboxd, like this does sound like a really interesting concept for a film for for many reasons, but specifically for me because I think it highlights something that doesn't get talked about very much when it comes to like the nature of war and just like geopolitical conflicts, is that there's no absolute right answer among a singular body of people.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? Like there's going to be people who inevitably feel differently from others, and like some who are dead neutral, some who are very radically on one side, and some who are very radically on the other. And I find that to be really interesting because like throughout time and history, like oftentimes it's those little interactions and conflicts between differing ideologies that drive war forward. And also, you know, and I think like learning to recognize where these differences come from can hopefully help towards informing people about how to avoid conflict and how to work through conflict in productive and diplomatic ways rather than just fucking killing each other, which I think is stupid.
Right, because this movie has a few like battles in it, but like for the most part, it's like the characters like speaking to one another and that friction that maybe felt there. Not that like is a dominating force, but you know, when it is people in their 20s and 30s, like that is the time when like they're evolving into the people like that they're going to be for the rest of their lives. Yeah. And essentially seeing their changes and the ways they're able to like realize what's morally right in certain situations versus what is morally wrong, and how they grapple with those decisions that they make, even like killing somebody, you know. It's really fantastic. It reminds me of those scenes in those war movies. Like, I don't know if we're going to talk about them later, but like something like Hacksaw Ridge, where or All Quiet on the Western Front, where there's an armistice between two individuals because they're in pain or because, you know, they're on opposing sides, but they care for each other because there's this natural humanity.
Because you realize that you're both human. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. And that's
like, oh my God,
that's the beauty of that. Yeah, you know?
Yeah.
It's like, if we can do that for each other, not just out of a selfish need, but that's where it comes, like that personal connection of them being friends comes from. That drives their connection. And it's like, oh, that really stirs my heart.
Yeah, I'm really curious to see this one because
it's very hard
I know
to find.
Paul Verhoeven is, you know, he's really apt to making really unique commentaries, you know. I mean, the only war commentary that I've seen from him is Starship Troopers. Which is also movie. Good. It's a great movie. And it's just like his style is very brash, I feel, you know, his commentary.
His early stuff is not.
No, really.
Actually, I would say like this is one of my favorites of his. Might be my favorite. And
really?
Yeah, I love RoboCop. I love Total Recall. I love the Starship Troopers, but Soldier of Orange feels like it's scaled back because he's so in tune with genre. And sometimes that genre excess is like all over the commentary, and that makes it more shiny in a sense, makes it easier to process and more overt. Whereas here it feels like a Hollywood director or like an auteur director from Europe has taken his skills as like a director and made like a really good drama, like adult drama.
Mm-hmm.
And I this was one of those movies that when I saw it, I think I saw it on Library Archive. So if anybody's looking for it, go there. But yeah, it's very good. I actually just got the DVD probably like a month ago. That was very hard to find, and I got a region-free disc. So,
ooh, look at you!
Nice.
Yeah.
All right, let me toss one to the mix here. I will start. I'm gonna do an honorable mention of one that's pretty similar. Maybe you'll talk about, Brandon. It sounds pretty similar. A Hidden Life. I'm gonna give an
I
honorable
thought
mention
about
to that.
it, but
I
I
haven't
didn't
seen
do
that.
it.
Such a
good.
good film.
Very good.
I think it might be my favorite Terrence Malick movie. I think it
It's up
is. But one film that I want to talk about that sort of captures a pretty interesting pre-war commentary that takes place days before the U.S.'s involvement in World War II. It was
Pearl Harbor.
yeah, days before Pearl Harbor. It won Best Picture, Brandon. From Here to Eternity.
From Here to Eternity. Oh, good movie.
This is a great
From
movie.
Here to Eternity.
You know, everyone
1953.
knows the movie from that famous scene where they're kissing on the beach and the waves.
Oh,
you know,
there's a Shrek 2 referenced it.
there's a Shrek
Yeah.
2 references it, but that movie is so much more than that scene. Like that scene is like not
It
even
is.
anything in the movie.
It isn't. It's like that scene of Raquel Welch in Dr. No, the James Bond movie, of her walking up in the bikini. It's like
yeah.
one brief moment, and then it's
Yeah.
like that for this movie. It's like that romance, it's good, but it's like
Yeah.
not the heart of the movie.
Exactly. Everyone would probably assume that scene is like the climax of the film. Like their love is just, is heightened to that moment, and they finally... No, that happens like in the first act, and then there's like more drama, after
Yeah.
that scene. But what I love about this is it's a film from the 50s, and
53.
so it's pretty still off the coattails of World War II, and most films you would see post World War II were very patriotic, very nationalistic, very pro US in the war. But this one is like, it's a very personal character piece on these soldiers who are stationed in Hawaii before Pearl Harbor is attacked, and it sort of shows that they're not great people, which is really interesting. It seems so ahead of its time for a film in the 50s to be making a film like this about showing that like the people that we sent off to war and the people that also died during the attacks in Pearl Harbor, they weren't saints. They weren't perfect people. Some people in this army weren't the best, and it shows them, grappling through relationships, cheating on. There's a dude who like he sort of cucks the general's wife, the general with his wife, and that's the scene where they're kissing on the beach. That's like his superior's wife, that they're trying to like figure out what to do there. And then there's a guy who sort of he falls in love with a girl who works at like one of the brothels in Hawaii, and I think that's my favorite like plot
Side story. Yeah.
Side story. We got Marty in this film. He's a douche who's racist towards
Ernest
Italians.
Yeah, Ernest Borgnine. He's so good.
Ernest Borgnine. And Frank Sinatra. He's racist
Very good.
towards Frank Sinatra. He's really good.
He's a good actor.
It's the first movie I've ever seen Frank Sinatra act in. I was like, wow. I didn't even know it was him, if I'm going to be honest.
He's so skinny and short, too.
He's so
It's
skinny
crazy.
and short. And he's very charismatic, and like his talking voice is nothing like his singing voice, and they all play very flawed people, which is super. Like no one's like a truly good person in this movie, which is so. It was just like it blew my mind that it came out in the 50s, right after World War II, because I feel like that was a time for people to like celebrate these heroes who fought in the war, but this film's like, no, it's there weren't perfect people here, and that's why I like it's one of my favorite Best Picture winners that I've watched in recent memory. But yeah, Brandon, you've seen it. Have you seen it recently, or how long has it been since you've seen it?
It's been a while. But I remember it, which is definitely a good sign for a movie, especially when you go through as many movies as all three of us do, it's sometimes hard to like remember every movie, like the details and such. But there are things that stand out to me, like bar brawls between people, the ending, climactic scene where Pearl Harbor is like basically taking place.
Yeah.
Incredible stuff, especially for the 50s, right? It's getting past the concept of a fetishizing war. It really takes its time to develop all of the characters and get you to know like what it's like being in one of these camps before a war even starts, you know, because there's no like reason for them to be like this. The US has no interest in being involved in World War II at the time, at least militarily. You know, they may be giving aid and such, but during that time, World War II and the US was like so separate. And so like to see them walking around in their everyday lives in this impending sense of doom, but also seeing like how their lives sort of go through that change when they're attacked. Very interesting. And I think you're right, Ethan. It's very surprising to see that so early on after World War II, which most people consider to be one of the greater American victories in terms of war. Yeah. And not one that is as negatively branded. Because, you know, Vietnam, Iraq, it's pretty obvious to see why those are like negatively branded. But here, like World War II is often the one that everybody points to and goes, that one was necessary. It's fine. You know, they're not trying to fetishize it. It's just there were so many sacrifices and it's terrible that there had to be sacrifices made, but they had to happen. And it's great to see that there is a more nuanced perspective. And you see that in a film like The Best Years of Our Lives, which also came out in the 1940s.
That came out even closer to World War II.
I think it was like right after, and it's like there is such a strong and poignant commentary about how it affects soldiers after the fact. And they utilize in both films actors and non-actors. And it's very impressive to see that back then they were still able to capture these like little moral grayness that I think we think older films are incapable of doing because they were made at a time when it was more propaganda was more common. But I think propaganda was just more overt. And now when we dig, you find stuff. You know, like there's Mr. Roberts, which is a John Ford movie from around the same time, and Yankee Doodle Dandy. Those two movies, those are ones that view war in like a enhanced, it's beautiful perspective. But these two movies, my goodness, they really provide a commentary.
Goodness gracious. Yeah. Chris, have you seen this film? If you don't,
no, I have.
We can just move on to the next one for your next picks if you want to.
Yeah, sure. I really like what you guys were talking about when it came to like, Ethan, you were talking about how like the humanization of these characters and like how we explore how these characters, these soldiers that we send to war are not perfect humans. Right. And I think that's, and like, you know, oftentimes I feel like when it comes to like conflict, it's easy to have a really black and white image of good and evil. You know what I mean? And like the good guys, the bad guys, you root for these guys, you hope these guys die, blah, blah, blah. But, you know, as you get older, and I think like as you kind of start to understand how this stuff works, like you start to realize how, I mean, don't get me wrong, there's a lot of evil people in the world, but there's a lot of grain. There more than anything, there's a lot of grayness in the world, and you don't always know. You know what I mean? And I think a movie that helped that highlights that as well. And this is a war. It takes place during war, but you don't really see the fighting. We've talked about this before, so I don't want to spend too much time on it. But Jojo Rabbit. Yes. I know this movie's a bit of a can of worms to open because it's a bit of a controversial movie now. And you know it has its fair share of people who love it and fair share of people who hate it. But for me, when I saw this movie, I was really struck by how found myself empathizing with this thing that I never would have thought I would empathize with. Now, it's not to say that I endorse anything that's happening in that movie, that's happening, obviously. However, the thing that makes this movie work for me is that we see we see the war and the discrimination and all these awful things through the eyes of a there's a word for this, impressionable child. You know what I mean? And I think what better way to contrast the dehumanization of humans in a war than the eyes of a child, and to see the innocence fade from their eyes as this war brings down hell upon them. And Jojo Rabbit, it's a comedy, and it's a very fun movie, but it's also at times devastatingly sad because you're forced to watch like I've always found it bizarre. I think I've talked to Justin about this a bunch, about how at what point in human history did we decide that killing each other for our beliefs and needs is okay? And I mean, I guess that dates back to the very earliest days of human history, but Jojo Rabbit for me did a really good job of explaining how you can corrupt the mind of someone so easily, especially a child, an impressionable child. And I found that to be devastatingly sad. But also, they did a great job of satirizing it, and at least in my opinion, I've never laughed at the expense of Nazis more than in this movie.
Yeah.
And I don't know. I think that's great. I personally didn't didn't really find too much issue with it, but I can see the critique from others, especially from those who may feel more negatively about it, who are from the Jewish community. But on my end, I very much found this movie to be really enlightening, and I really enjoyed it.
Maybe people think it trivializes the experience gone through by.
I'm sure it definitely. I can certainly see that. I can certainly see how it can be an oversimplification of a much more complex issue. However, as a person who is not part of that community, wasn't alive at that time, doesn't really know all that much about about the Hitler Youth and all that stuff. For me, and this is just my experience, keep in mind, I found it to be really, really great. And that's just I'm just speaking on my experience there. But yeah, I mean, and I brought this up because I really liked what you guys said about humanizing and about humanizing what is more than likely the most dehumanizing thing on our planet, which is war.
I'm with you, Chris. I think this movie, I personally found it very profound, because I can totally see why, people from the Jewish community would see this as wait, you're satirizing one of the worst atrocities that happened to our people, but how I see it is Taika Waititi he's making a celebration of love and it's just a kindness trumps everything. Kindness trumps overall in life, I think that's that was the biggest takeaway message that I got when I saw this movie. I'm like, oh, the human ability to be kind is our greatest superpower of all, and showing that, having a child learn that the hard way by being raised in a community whose foundation is based on hate and hatred and fear, and having him through his mother hiding a Jewish girl in their house, and him starting to slowly learn unravel that this reality that he was told is not true at all, and I find it a beautiful film, especially once you finally get down to it in the last scene of the film where they're dancing to David Bowie, Heroes, a German version of it. I tear up during that scene, I was at Planet Fitness the other day, and they started playing that on the TV while I was running the treadmill. I was like, what? Why? I'm like, I was getting emotional even though I couldn't hear the movie playing. I was like, I was like 20 minutes into my run, and I was like, I'm exhausted, but I'm like, I'm about to tear up, bro. Like, what's going on? But, and I mean, if I can, like, I can understand the hate for Taika Waititi for his performance as Hitler, like satirizing that, making a clown out of a very scary historical figure. But I think it's like, it's used sparingly enough, and I think it's communicated quite clear that, like, yeah, like a kid would see Hitler as this, a kid who grew up in Nazi Germany, raised those horrible morals, would see Hitler as like this hero, and you see that today. And I'm not going to compare these two. These two people are very different, but I still think they're very bad people. You see kids like seeing Trump as a superhero. A lot of kids.
There's literally buses with like Trump decals, but they photoshopped his head onto Rocky Balboa.
Like, yeah, and it's just like this shit still happens. Kids still idolize because brainwashing a child is the easiest thing to do. Because their brain is still developing, so they'll believe anything.
Mm-hmm.
And I just think that was a very pertinent lesson.
Coney 2012 taught us that.
Absolutely,
exactly.
It absolutely did.
Exactly, it taught us that.
It happened to me. It happened to me. It happened to me. It could happen to you. Is that the guy from the Star Wars? Oh,
no,
man.
that's Joseph Kony.
Well, like Downfall does a good enough job at that Hitler movie from the early 2000s where Bruno Ganz plays Hitler and you see his last days
from the famous
meme. And it's great because it's not a movie where you're like trying to empathize with it. Neither is Jojo Rabbit. I think both of those films are squarely focused on historical analysis on Downfall's part, but on the other part is to make fun of and infantilize a person who is a horrible monster. And I don't get why. I do get why people would say it's problematic, but I don't agree. I think anything in art should be taken, not be taken at face value. And I think they do with that because they're so often used to doing that with somebody who's a comedic director like Taika Waititi. And we have our problems with the way he talks about even his own art. Yeah. But like, I think he, at least with the exception of Thor: Love and Thunder, has made terrific films that are very personal.
One of my all-time favorite directors until Love and Thunder,
Yeah.
I don't know what happened there.
Kind of fell off out there.
He did.
But I think the hate for the person has sort of overtaken the hate for the movie.
Yeah.
If that makes sense.
I agree with that.
No, I do agree with
that.
So, Brandon, you want to jump us into another one?
Yeah. I've got a 1997 satire starring Robert De Niro and Dustin Hoffman.
Huh.
It's called Wag the Dog. Have you guys heard of this one?
Wag the Dog?
Dog.
Yeah. Have you heard of it?
You made this up. No,
I did not. It's real. It's directed by Barry Levinson, and it follows okay, guys, this came out before the Clinton-Lewinsky scandal, a month before it dropped. So, essentially, the president is caught making advances on an underage girl in the Oval Office.
Ooh,
2 weeks.
That's
2 weeks.
Spicy. That's
2 weeks before the election. So the Secret Service and his foreign policy and policy advisors call in two people, Robert De Niro's character and Dustin Hoffman's character, to make up a war that doesn't exist so that it will bump his poll numbers up before the election so that he gets reelected. And so they make up a war in Albania and try to like make it so that people are like, oh, let's rally around the flag. Let's rally around the troops. And essentially, like, it involves, like, an actress played by a young Kirsten Dunst running through a town with like a baby. They manufacture or a cat, and they like manufacture like explosions going off around her, and then they try to trick the media into doing things, and then they have to come up with a story about a hero who's lost overseas, because the CIA is like, we don't really have a side in this. We don't want the president, but they're like, there's no evidence of a war, so they're breathing down the executive branch's neck. And it's a comedy. It's a very dark comedy, but it's so funny. And I watched it probably about a month or two ago, and I remember thinking, like, how crazy is it that one, it came out before the Clinton Lewinsky scandal that then succeeded to do a bombing campaign in 1998 in Kosovo, in Iraq. So it's like there are so many things that you could draw a parallel to in real life, but also it's commenting on the military-industrial complex and how that tricks Americans into thinking, okay, we need to rally behind the flag and rally behind the executive because they will lead us through this war. As you saw during World War II with FDR getting elected 4 times in a row. So, very interesting movie.
Absolutely. That sounds
very
interesting.
It's a great concept. Yeah, and also like the fact that like I hear that, and as ridiculous of a concept as that is, I can buy into it. Like if someone told me like some president tried that shit at some point, there's a small part of me that might believe it. Just because like, worse shit happens.
What we need is another war.
What we do need that. No, I'm kidding. We don't need another war. We need to stop all wars.
We need another war movie. I'm gonna shout one out.
Go for it.
Oh man, this one's my toughest one of which one I'm gonna talk about. Where it's one that takes place like in the war. Chris already mentioned 1917. I am gonna go with, I think, the scariest war film ever made. Come and See.
Ooh, I've not seen this yet.
I've
heard it's devastating. I've heard it's devastating though.
It is absolutely relentless. It takes place. It's the this is also World War II, right, Brandon?
I believe so.
Yeah, I think it's
the Nazi invasion of Belarus. And you just follow this kid, literally a kid, who is just trying to stay alive during this, and this director, what's his name again? Klimov
or something.
Klimov is relentless in showing like just how awful the Nazis were.
It's so brutal.
It's so brutal. They don't even.
There's a barn scene that is something.
I'm sure you've heard of that scene, Chris. Have you? Yeah.
I've heard of a barn scene, but I don't know what happens in it.
I don't want to tell you what happens in this barn scene, but it is just insane, to say the least. And the way you watch this kid like change in real time, and physically too. This is something that actually happens. That actually happens in real life. They've sent like kids off to war, and they come back with wrinkles on their face. Because they literally just go to the most stressful situations the human could possibly experience. Any human. But you're always like on the edge of your seat, like just praying this kid makes it out alive, and avoids the danger and everything like that. And like when he has to like run across the field being shot at, trudging through the swamps of Belarus. It's I remember watching it and just like having to just like take a second after the movie and just be like, that happened to some people. It feels a lot like I don't know if you're going to talk about this, Brandon, but the Human Condition.
I thought about it, but
specifically the Human Condition 3. I feel like they're very similar. And the third one I think is my favorite.
I'm a first one kind of guy.
First one. But the second one's the weakest, right?
Yeah, it's good. It's really good, but the third and first are head and shoulders above
are
it.
just way above it. Yeah.
Yeah.
But just like it's just an exercise in human resiliency through the absolute worst and the scariest situations one could be in.
Mm-hmm.
And
he's face to face with evil people, and he's like defenseless. He has no weapons.
Yeah.
He is like
kid.
There's nothing on his back but his clothes, and the way he sees the world, and you see it from his perspective sometimes, is like surreal, because sometimes as a kid your like imagination takes hold, but we never imagine outside of like a monster under your bed type situation what it would be like for a kid to go through like the horror of war. You know, not even like Jojo Rabbit could do that, which is a much more lighter version of a child in war than this, which is like utterly gross and devastating and dim.
Yeah.
You just want to take a shower after.
You do. You want to just take a shower and just like be comfy and cozy and watch like, I don't know,
Minions 2.
No, that maybe The Rise of Gru makes you want to drink out of a Minion sipper. My Minion sipper's out of water, everybody. I'm sorry, no funny sounds this time. But yeah, Chris, don't you own this on Criterion? Wasn't this a movie you bought?
This was one of my blind purchases, and it's sitting in my room in your apartment right now.
Oh yeah, see, I'm gonna watch it. I'm gonna watch your Criterion of it tonight. No.
Don't you have one?
Yeah, I already have one.
I don't know if it's on my list.
But yeah, you got to be in a mood for that one, Chris. I understand why you put it off. You know, it's a real film. You got to just be like, all right, I'm ready to see some shit. You know.
Yeah. Speaking of being thrown into just watching the shit unfold.
Yeah.
I'll throw in 2 movies here. The first one is a movie that I have been studying quite a bit in my editing class from my first semester at LMU. We basically were each assigned a movie from the last 10 years and had to like basically dissect its editing down to like individual frames almost, which was exhausting. But I was given Dunkirk. Yeah, I kind of sharing that with you, Brandon. I do really like this movie, but I think it suffers from almost a similar issue that 1917 does.
I was going to make a comparison when we were talking about
honestly, that would make a good comparison. Those two films would make a great comparative essay. Dunkirk, directed by Nolan, you know, similarly to 1917, beautiful craftsmanship, yeah. But it does a really great job of throwing you into it. You know, you feel very well immersed, which is very much something that Nolan is fantastic at, is kind of enworlding his audience, and to throw them into into the conflict at Dunkirk. It was something that I thought was incredibly engrossing. I felt very much immersed in that world. I felt the danger. But another thing, I felt unusually apathetic about the characters. As much as like, you know, oh my gosh, I hope they make it out. Like if one of them died, I wouldn't have shed a tear over it.
Yeah.
Which mechanical. I suppose in a way that's kind of like having it be kind of like emotionally stunted and allowing the sheer terror of the event be the forefront of the film in a way that works just as well. But it does lack that characterization. One more movie I'll throw in real quick, just because I have to. This might be more of a protest movie, but I think it has a lot of commonality with Battle of Algiers, so I'm going to throw it in. And also Brandon recently watched it, because I made him watch it. Revolution of Our Times. More of a protest movie than a specific war movie. But I think in a way it still nonetheless kind of functions in the same kind of realm, if you know what I'm saying.
Okay.
I just want to throw that in there because I just like shouting out this movie. Cool. We're coming up on an hour here, guys. Do you have any? Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
Would you call what's going on in Hong Kong a war?
No, not. I mean, not now. War's over, but at the time, I would have called it like significant okay, this might just be like me diplomatically like talking, but like
Oh yeah.
it came across
So
much.
you can go home this month.
I can go home.
Yeah, careful.
But yeah, I kind of saw it as like just mass civil disobedience. There was
Mhm.
definitely a lot of like crazy shit. There was like and like some awful things happened.
Yeah.
And admittedly, both sides perpetrated some awful things. But you know, yeah. But the reason I throw this movie in there is because I think just having it as a collection of real world real world like just transparently laid out for you.
Yeah.
I find that to be really interesting. That's why I drew that comparison to Battle of Algiers, even though there is some level of construction within Battle of Algiers. But these two films kind of teeter in that same space where they are mostly just transparent, um, like actuality films in a weird way, or just documentary, I suppose, in that way.
Yeah.
Yeah. Do you guys have any last things you want to shout out before we kind of wrap it up here as we're getting towards the hour mark?
Well, I never talked about any films that sort of like went through like the process of post-war. So I have a couple of honorable mentions here. I think Da Five Bloods is a really good reflection of war and the effects it has on people, and the psychology.
Especially the psyche of the soldiers, yeah.
The psyche of the soldiers. Delroy Lindo, man, he should have won Best Actor.
He
wasn't
really
even
good
nominated
that year. He wasn't even fucking nominated. That made me so mad. Incendies. I was gonna pick Incendies as a post-war because that has to do with memory in war, and just uncovering a story of these kids and their mother and just how crazy that was. I think it's a fictional war, but still, you still very much see that sort of stuff happen, in like a relatively modern war scape, But the last one I really want to talk about is a post-war movie is Hiroshima Mon Amour.
This was on my list as well.
Yeah, just sort of shared trauma, and two people finding each other through just sharing their experiences in war, a man and a woman and the love that they find for one another in a place that was hit with war the worst, Hiroshima, and I remember just like finding this film so beautiful the first time I watched it, and it's a very slowly paced movie, very melancholic, and reflective because it's like it takes place in this spot that's like it feels like time stopped when the bomb hit Hiroshima, and it's a very traumatizing film, but it's also a very comforting film where these two people from two different sides of the planet during this war, found solace in each other, and I just think it's great. I know, Chris, you love this film a lot like me.
This movie is beautiful. I was very touched to like what you said, Ethan, like these two people who yes, like share an experience, but of the devastation that they felt personally and just in their home throughout the war, but also how they find like companionship in one another and feel like their feelings are validated by one another's experiences. I found it. I don't know. I found that the kind of ambient quality that comes through with this film, where you kind of have this very like solemn and desolate, kind of feeling when you watch this film. It's depressing, but also like it's the most comforting thing after the fact to know that you're not alone. You know what I mean? And I think this was. I mean, you could draw parallels of these two characters' dynamic between two people who share any level of similarity and experience, and I think that speaks to like the human condition very well, but also so it's broad in that way, but also very specific about what happened to them throughout this time period. Yeah. Going off that, another movie that I think shows the repercussions of war, and granted, this one takes place during the war, but is more about the fallout and what came of it. Grave of Fireflies.
That was one of my honorable mentions too.
Yeah, devastating.
Brandon,
even according to Brandon, too sad. A little too sad for Brandon.
Too sad for giddy little Brandon. Oh, he's so happy. Look at him. He's jumping jacks, and he's playing on the Ferris wheel.
Clapping.
Yeah, he doesn't like a little sad movie.
But yeah, I mean, Grave of Fireflies. I mean,
yeah,
in a way, kind of similar to Hiroshima Mon Amour, where it's like two people have a shared experience, and then some devastating shit happen. I don't want to spoil because too much about this movie, because there is some very devastating stuff that happens in this movie, and once you kind of piece it all together, the title makes a lot of sense.
Yeah,
but yeah, yeah, and I just like how we explore the like what such a ridiculous conflict causes harm, and how much harm it causes to people all over the world.
Yeah.
And the repercussions of that, and why it's just stop fighting. Like, just put it down. Like, I don't know. Stop killing each other. Let's see. And at the end of the day, like, why?
Yeah.
Do you really, like, honestly, do you care that much to kill someone for that?
Yes.
I don't care about anything enough to kill someone.
Brandon does. Look at him. What is he doing? What are you doing with your eyes?
I think he's plotting to kill someone.
He's doing slanty eyes right now.
That's racist, Brandon. What do you fuck?
I'm being framed. I'm not doing racist eyes.
Are you being racist right now, Brandon? Oh, he's making big eyes.
I'm making big eyes.
Oh, sure. Ew, that's gross. Stop doing that. Talk about some movies, Brandon. What do you think? What do you think about war?
If we're going to talk about a post-war movie, my first thought goes to Born on the 4th of July, which kind of shows the stages.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Just because,
the holes in the middle.
Yeah, Ethan hated
That's all
that.
I remember. I walked in, I saw that, I'm like, that is atrocious. I'm leaving.
It's because it's like the lead character played by Tom Cruise is played on the 4th of July, or is born on the 4th of July. And so, like, he sees his birthday as, like, this patriotic duty. And then when he, like, enlists in the war. He's so excited. That's in most kids who don't know what war is and the consequences. And then once he enlists, there's, like, one war scene or two war scenes that are absolutely devastating, akin to, like, something like Come and See. And Oliver Stone really just has an eye for it, maybe because he's a veteran himself, very anti-war in his filmmaking. But he just gets it. And then the whole back half of the movie is him grappling with his experiences and his new issues regarding being a veteran, his disability that he gains, his issue with the government and how they handle veterans issues. Like, that's a great one. I think Paths of Glory is another really good anti-war movie.
Yes.
It's a good Kubrick that kind of comments on masculinity, but also like the futile nature of war and how the people in power don't always have to really deal with the ramifications of the actions that are made. And it's really compelling as a courtroom drama as well. There is a South Korean movie that I watched in Korean cinema in college that I also really like. It's called Welcome to Dong Mekgal. It's essentially, Ethan, did you watch Lost Horizon? It's a Capra movie from the 30s, I'm asking.
Maybe.
Because, okay.
No.
Well, it's, okay. Well, it's about the Korean War and, not Lost Horizon, Welcome to Dong Mekgal. And there are pilots who are crashing in like this foresty, mountainy area in South Korea, between South and North Korea. It's kind of unnamed. But it's essentially they stumble upon a land of like that's lost in time, kind of like utopian residence, where there's like no war. It's just a small town. Everybody sort of gets along. And what happens when both South Korean and North Korean soldiers and an American soldier end up there? Because obviously they don't want to disturb the peace of this small town that's idyllic and utopian. but also they all have their ideologies and what they stand for. And so I like how it plays with the restraint there, and then it forces those soldiers to like look past the sides they're fighting for. That's a really good one.
Yeah, that sounds cool.
And Failsafe, that's just one of my favorites.
Oh.
I love that.
Talk about it. We haven't really talked about Cold War movies. That's probably one of the best Cold War movies out there.
Whenever we do these genre episodes, I notice our conversations go way longer because these genres.
Because it's so big. Yeah, it's such a broad topic.
Genres are massive.
I didn't think this was going to be like a topic that was going to generate a lot of conversation. But then when I was looking at the movies,
done it for so long. I remember we brought it up a while ago, and we're like, I don't know. It's just like it's war movies. There's not much to say, but we got a lot out of it this episode.
Yeah.
So yeah, thank you all so much for listening. Let us know your favorite war movies. And if you like war or not in the comments. Chris, you want to say something?
Yeah. Can I throw in a couple of last minute honorable mentions?
Absolutely. Yeah. Let's throw in some honorable mentions.
Okay. I'll make these quick. I'm just gonna name off ones that there are ones that I put in like when you said Sausage Party, I wrote that down because I was like, okay, maybe I'll talk about that.
That's the one.
Maybe there is a religious undertone I could go into this thing, but I'm omitting anything that was even mentioned. So no Hacksaw Ridge, no Sausage Party. But I will throw in Schindler's List.
Yes.
Boy in the Striped Pajamas. That was very formative for me growing up because I never really was confronted by that before when I was growing up. That was a history class 101 for me.
Really?
Full Metal Jacket. I thought that movie's really great. I think the psychological effects on war has on soldiers. I think that it explores it really well. Last ones, these are more like the outside the box genre ones. Like outside of the mainline genre. Pan's Labyrinth, Overlord, The Great Dictator. And this is more like a political drama than a straight up war movie, but it is a war. Dune.
That is a war. That is a war.
Dune is war.
Guys, we never even mentioned War for the Planet of the Apes.
Oh yeah, War for the Planet of the Apes.
Damn, movie too. That movie's so good. Okay, let me show some honorable mentions. My 2 internment camp movies, Bridge on the River Kwai and Merry Christmas, Mr. Lawrence. Very good war movies that say a lot about human connection when being imprisoned. Saving Private Ryan, obviously. Let's see. What else? What else we got here? Paths of Glory.
You got Zero Dark 30?
Yeah. I'm surprised, Chris, you never talked about Ran.
Oh fuck! I didn't even think of that.
That's a war. It's a war between two brothers.
That is a huge war movie. That wasn't even listed on Letterboxd as a war movie.
Is also a war movie.
Throwing Ran in there. That's a great movie.
I'm gonna throw in some more Kurosawa. No Regrets for Our Youth. Also great anti-war movie.
Yeah.
War of the Worlds. I don't think that's a war movie. That's an invasion movie.
War
invasion is war.
That's true. Doctor Strangelove, very good war satire.
Oh yeah.
Lawrence of Arabia, obviously. Dude, Pinocchio's a war movie. Guillermo del Toro's Pinocchio. If you're gonna pull out,
Fascist.
Yeah. And also, last one, Rome Open City. This was one of my favorite neo-realist Italian films. Because the neo-realist movement itself is connected to war.
It's a response to the war.
It's a response of Italians rolling in the shambles of war and their destroyed towns. And seeing how the people are living now after the war.
They worked with what they got.
Yeah, we're what we got. Okay.
Non-actors
freaking stolen. All right, leave me alone. But yeah,
those are my honorable mentions. No permits.
Brandon, you want to throw out some?
Yeah, I mean, Failsafe. I love that movie so much. One of my favorite movies ever. Yeah. The Deer Hunter. Jesus, that's a dark one. Anthropoid. If you haven't seen it, very underrated war movie starring Cillian Murphy. Tropic Thunder. If we're gonna.
Tropic Thunder. Tropic Thunder.
Duck Soup is another good comedy war. Good Morning Vietnam. That's a good one. Life and Death of Colonel Blimp and Patton are really good at dissecting egos of war and how those like kind of figures can be promoted as they are.
A Matter of Life and Death, too.
Yeah. Wings, that first Best Picture winner.
Oh man, that's an amazing movie. It's one of my favorites. Yeah, absolutely.
The Ascent, very desolate Russian film about like people getting stuck in the cold during the war. The Lives of Others, I recently watched, post-war Germany sort of thing, but how war continues even when there is no fighting. And Hurt Locker. And lastly, there's this animated movie called When the Wind Blows, where there's a nuclear event that happens, essentially, as a result of a war, and this old couple is just trying to cope with it. So they are like already at the end of their life, but they're letting the radiation leak in, and they're just trying their best to live their life out and survive. And it's through paranoia and sadness, and it's just a devastating watch.
Okay, 2 more, and then we're gonna end the episode. Going off animation, The Wind Rises. That's a war movie, about a man who designed planes for the Japanese military. And then I am so shocked that you didn't bring this up as well, Chris. Top Gun Maverick.
Yeah.
It's just so obvious.
Yeah. Yeah, that is a war movie.
Yeah.
They attack. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Fine. God damn it.
I
don't know. I think that movie is a father movie. I don't see it as a war movie.
No, but they're preparing, and it's military propaganda.
They are going to war.
No, it's modern warfare. It's modern warfare.
I'm going to say Avengers Endgame because they fight
Infinity War is the coolest war movie I've ever seen because Thor's in it.
Okay.
The final battle of Avengers Endgame is way cooler than D-Day, guys. Let's be honest here. All right, let's end this episode of Stack. Thank you all so much for listening.
Thank you,
Let
everyone.
us know your war movies that you love. Let us know why you love war and killing people in the comments.
Milo, I'm looking to hear from you.
Milo, I want you to write out a defense of why you love killing people in war, because I know you have. No.
And Joey, I know you don't like war movies.
Joey loves war movies secretly.
You think so?
Justin
I'm just spreading lies at the end of the episode about Milo and Joey. So if you like lying, make sure you listen to Stacked, because we lie a lot.
We lie a lot.
We lie a lot.
Next week.
Speaking of which, next week, guys, we got a big announcement for you.
Shut. Stupid.
All right, we're ending this bit. There's no announcement. Go home.
Yeah, no announcement. All right, everything's the same.
That's the announcement. The announcement is there's no announcement. Get out of my life.